This is like a greatest hits record. Look at everyone that's here.
Oh, hey there, Dr. Strange. Thanks for the invite, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Awesome.
I think Hershon's on this too.
Is he? Where's Dan?
Yeah, he's here.
All right, men, it is 8 p.m. Just want to acknowledge that because what I normally do is I give another 60 seconds just for men to join because they've got to register, probably receive an automated email. And so we're going to give this another 60 seconds and then we'll set it off.
Hey, it's good to see you, Dan.
Good to see
Long time.
Nice.
Yeah. We both have beards now.
Yeah.
All grown up.
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic, man. We'll have to catch up at another time.
Yeah, sounds good. Good to see you.
All right. Awesome, man.
All right, men, we are going to get started. So first, a huge welcome. Thanks so much for coming. Appreciate you being here, whatever it took for you to get on this call. I know of a couple of men that had to rearrange schedules and stuff like that. So thanks so much for being here. I'm going to switch off here and just go to live screen and then gallery view. Okay, great. So you men should be able to see this in gallery view now. Okay, good. So first, what I want to do is we have a small enough number of men that we can do a quick introductory round here. Here's what I'd like to know. Your last name, if you've never been to a men's meeting, men's circle, any kind of men's event, we always mention our last name, just a way of honoring the masculine line. Obviously, you would have gotten your last name most likely from your dad, right? So you mentioned your last name. How did you find out about this call? And then what is the biggest victory of the past week for you? All right, your biggest victory of the past 7 days. And then we're going to do a celebration that I'm bringing over from the MCH, the Men's Connect Hub weekly call that I ran for 13 weeks. And I'm going to count to 3 and we're going to celebrate the man's victory by just giving a dual thumbs up into your camera and yelling ho. If you're unfamiliar with that, that's an old Native American acknowledgement. It's a thing customary in men's circles. So we're going to bring that over. So again, it's going to be a thumbs up into the camera and a ho in celebration of the man's victory. All right. So I'll set it off. Again, the 3 parts: last name, how'd you find out about this call, and then your biggest victory of the past week. So my name is Reyes. I created the call, obviously. Biggest victory of the past week was being able to accomplish, like I had a big action plan, and most weeks I don't even get through 3/4 of it. I got through roughly about 80% of everything that I wanted to get done leading up to this call. So that was a big victory for me. So again, if you remember, 2 thumbs up with a ho, and I'm going to count to 3. 1, 2, 3. Ho! Now, when we do it, go off mute so that every man can hear you. All right? So next man, no particular order.
Morgan in this bitch. You know, fuck. You know, I saw this call on our Reyes's Instagram. You know what I mean? And couldn't make any fucking excuses, you know, because I'm off this week. And I was like, yeah, let's fucking do it. Biggest victory is happening today. You know, I made a commitment to be a man of commitment, and I'm throwing out all my fucking sex toys and all that shit out. The longest I ever went without masturbating in my life is 2 weeks, and I did that twice. One time when I was a kid, and then one time as a commitment in the men's circle. So this time I made a commitment for 3 weeks, and you know, no nothing, you know, and I deleted all my porn and all that shit. Like I'm fucking gonna be a man of commitment. Fuck all the bullshit.
Good shit, man. All right, awesome. Men, let's celebrate that victory on a count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Ho!
Whoa!
All right, excellent. Okay, next man. I want to have you laser it in under 30 seconds.
All right, Irving. You got it? Villa, you got it? You go.
Go ahead, bro.
Irving, heard about it through Reyes, biggest victory. I'm going to be writing a children's story for little kids with type 1 diabetes. And it's all about empowering them. And it's like about this little kid. It's going to be amazing. And I think we're going to get Ray. It's about this little kid who wants to be a basketball player. Whatever. Doesn't matter. I got that. Ray Allen, the basketball player, is going to read it. It's going to be the shit.
Awesome. So from giving up adult entertainment to writing a kid's book. Love it. All right,
Yeah.
then celebrate the victory on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Ho!
Oh.
Great. Next man.
All right, Santos. I'm new to this. I heard about this through my good friend Irving over there, longtime friend. And my greatest victory this week is I have done at about 20 remote live streams from Monday to today. So I haven't had too much sleep, not too much rest. But I knocked it out. I made my clients very happy, and I feel like, you know, that's reward for me. I'm kind of knocking it out of the park. So, you know,
Shit, man.
proud about it.
Awesome. And welcome. All right, man. On the
Thank
count
you.
of 3. 1, 2, 3. Ho!
Oh.
Awesome. Next man.
Man, this is Villa. I heard about this meeting through Reyes. We're in the same team, men's team. And my biggest win for the week, as of now, I've had 3 days, 3 out of 4 days, positive, like over $300 profit day trading, and I've been able to remove my emotion from day trading. Like I've had some losses and whatnot, but it's just, you know, that's my biggest win. It's like removing my emotions, whether I win or lose. It's like, all right, let's keep moving.
That's awesome, man. All right, man. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Ho!
Oh.
Awesome. Next man.
Patino here. I heard about this through you, Reyes, up in Toronto. And the next thing is just a victory for the week.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, victory for me is my business flow is back on track. I got an extra 2 clients, and I'm about to put together an enormous deal. It's nearly a $3 million deal, and that's my victory. The only thing is I got to carry it through to closing. That's all. So that's my victory for the week.
Excellent, man. All right, man. Let's celebrate on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Ho! Excellent. Next man.
All right, man. This is Bertrand. I know about this meeting through Reyes. He is on my team with Villa. And a victory I had this week was having an unemotional masculine conversation with my pops. And I was just really, really proud of that. So I'm complete.
Good shit, man. All right, man. Let's celebrate it on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Ho!
Oh.
Next man.
Friedman. Hey, man. Friedman. I heard about this through Reyes. He is not on my team. He is on a rival team, and our team is going to win. And yes, thank you, Harsha. Unbiased.
No.
So biggest victory was my lady's birthday was last Friday, and I really did a great job. Gave her great bullshit, took care of her, gave her great present. Yes, and sex as well, in addition to. And she stayed awake for almost all of it. So that was a big victory. Complete.
Excellent. All right, men, on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
Oh.
All right, next man.
This is Sarshan. I know about this from Reyes as well. I'm also on a sweet rival team. This week I've been out in Colorado running up a mountain every morning, first thing, talking to Taylor from my team, and both of us just doing 5 minutes of just like what the fuck we want from our day. And it's super empowering and has been really just getting me going for the past 2 weeks. So getting me on track and in a positive mindset.
Excellent. Great way to start. All right, men, count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
Oh.
Next man.
Hey man, this is Kihara. I know Reyes, but I got an invite from Meeches, that crazy loud fucker right there. And biggest win for me this week was I'm a team captain out on the West Coast, so had a great meeting yesterday, even though I had my team get sick. So great fucking meeting, showed up and all the men had a great time. And that's my big win for this week. I'm complete.
Excellent. All right, man, let's celebrate in the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. All right, next man.
Man, this is Meeches. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh.
I heard about this. Thank you. I heard about this through Reyes. I am the mediator between both rival teams. And victory for this week is I have been handling issues with my mom in her apartment emotionless, not heartless, but just not like Villa, not emotional or feminine about it. Just handling shit, no problem.
Beautiful.
I'm complete, man. Thank you.
Excellent. All right, men, count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
Oh.
Beautiful.
Irving, where the fuck is my home, man?
What's up?
Where's his hose at?
Look at Sluts at.
All right, next man. We lose. Yeah, Moss, I think you were trying to speak before. Cannot hear you at all if you're trying to. Your audio's off. Nope, cannot hear you. Okay, next man, give it a shot. Murray, I know you just joined us. Quick check in here is going to be your last name. How'd you find out about this? And then your biggest victory of the past week.
Kessler, I found out from Reyes. Biggest win is being offered a job after losing it 2 weeks ago. So that's my big win for the week.
Got it. Excellent. All right, man, on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
Oh.
All right.
Awesome.
Next man. Next man, let's go.
This is Smith. I heard about this call through Reyes. I'm on a men's team with him. My big win for the week was I made a commitment regarding incantations every morning, actually 3 times a day, and I carried that out. And was a great practice and really put me in a very good performance state, and it's something that I am looking forward to using moving forward. I'm complete.
Excellent. All right, men, count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
Oh!
All right.
Yes,
man.
Smitty.
I think we only got a few men left. Yeah, Murray.
Can you hear me now?
Moss?
Moss,
Yeah.
can you hear me?
The audio is challenging.
All right, I'll see if I can clean that up later because I'm running some filters due to noise reduction. Anyways, short version, I heard about this through Reyes, and my wins for the past week is I've started a new diet plan, which I'm really excited about. And I would say my biggest win is that I'm intentionally feeling good. I'm complete.
Awesome. All right, man. Let's celebrate it. Moss, if you want to mute it. Hearing myself. All right. On the count of three, we celebrate it. 1, 2, 3. Ho! All right. Next man.
Hey, this is Murray. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, what's going on again? My name is Murray. Man who told me about this call is Joe Gould. And biggest victory this week. I pretty much laid out my challenge for my business 5-day challenge, and so it took me a lot of mind fucking to go through, but I put it down, and so I'll probably get started up. I was going to do it next week, but I think I'm gonna start it after 4th of July. But yeah. So just one small step for mankind.
There you go. Excellent. All right, man, let's celebrate it on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Oh. Okay. Next man. If you just joined the call, what we're doing is a quick check-in. 3 parts, simply your last name, how'd you find out about the call, and then your biggest victory of the past 7 days. There's only a couple of men left, including Gregory Bertrand, who we can't see you on video, but you can unmute yourself and speak.
Yes, sir. Can you see me now?
Yes, you can.
All right. Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Bertrand. I heard about this meeting through a cousin of mine. I'm not too knowledgeable about it, but he let me know a little bit about what it's about. So, I was interested in bettering myself and being associated with men who want to better themselves as well. And my biggest win is an extension of what I've been working on for several months, just building on my investments and growing my savings in my retirement. And being a better father, of course.
How many kids you got?
I have 1 child.
How old?
And that's it. I'm staying there.
When you hear it from a man when he's had enough. Understood.
What's up, cuz?
What's going on? My cousin's in here too.
Let's celebrate the man's victory on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Ho! Okay, if you just joined the call, we're doing a quick check-in. It's in 3 parts. It's your last name. How'd you find out about the call? And then in 30 seconds or less, your biggest victory of the past week. That's it. I think I saw somebody. Yeah, Chris, you were on mute while you were trying to speak. If you want, I can unmute you. Nope, I can't. You got to unmute yourself for whatever reason. Okay, was that everybody?
There. Can you hear me now?
There you go. Yep, now I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. I guess Wilby is my name. Heard about it just surfing around, maybe Facebook or somewhere around there. And my biggest win this week is probably purging some stuff. I'm a bit of a collecting hoarder guy, wire and just stuff I'm realizing is junk, and I'm just purging. Yeah, that's my big goal this week. Got to lighten my load and not drag around so much stuff.
Okay, got it. All right, man, on the count of 3, we celebrate it. 1, 2, 3. Ho!
Will be.
All right, next man. I think the last man we got on is Rivera. Yep, there you go, man.
Hey, there you go. Riviera.
Riviera. Wait a minute, did I meet you in Toronto?
You did. Somewhere in the bushes in Toronto, yes. I got a text from, I think it's Blackley Patino. So I thought I would sign up. It took me a while to get online, but here I am. My biggest win this week is probably just accepting the limitations of COVID. That's
Understood.
it. Yeah.
Okay, got it. All right, man, on the count of 3, let's celebrate that. 1, 2, 3. Ho! All right, beautiful. So I believe that's everybody. Anybody that comes on after this will just, we're not going to do any more check-in. All right, so great. Man, I want to share with you part of the purpose of this. This is something that I began earlier in the year before COVID hit. And what I set out to do was to create a series of talks and some trainings. But then COVID-19 hit and the whole spring season just got canceled. Like many people, I went through a period of, there was some freaking out. There was some nervousness. I'm like, what the hell am I gonna do? And I'm in this year-long mentoring program, and one of our mentors really put it to us that during challenging times, leaders are needed more than ever before. And so we got challenged then to step up and do something. And as this person was talking, yeah, I was all about it. I was deeply inspired. I was like, absolutely, want to do it. And then we went around and started, fleshing out how are we going to do this? And I came up with a plan. And what I said was I was going to create this weekly call for men just to have men come on and connect and share what the challenges are and to turn it into a solutions lab. That was the most important thing. And I called it the MCH, the Men's Connect Hub. Now, some of you may know this, but within 24 hours of that, I'd wish that I could recoil and take it all back. Because in the face of the challenge, and I felt like my business was suffering, wound up not suffering, but in the first couple of weeks, it was incredibly challenging. And for me, it was just easier to be a recluse. And I had a lot of work on my plate, including in this mentoring program. I just wanted to be that studious recluse and not deal with many people, much less go out and publicly do something where I got to publicly put out videos, promote a thing, and then run a weekly call. But then I'd realized that that is ultimately an expression of my vision. And part of my vision for 2020 is to have a bigger platform, is to have a bigger presence. And so doing the MCH in response to the pandemic, where I knew that connection was going to be a big challenge for a lot of people, I wanted to create a connection hub. Ran it for 13 weeks. I brought it to a close last week, partly to focus on this and some other projects, because I'd realized then in the wake of what occurred with George Floyd, and I put out a couple of videos around that, my heart was very heavy and I experienced a lot of internal tension. And for me, what I've come to realize is that when I experience internal tension, that's my voice not coming out. There's something I need to say. There's something I need to express, and I need to find a way to put it out there. And it's almost never just a one-on-one thing of dealing with a person. That's pretty easy, and I do that customarily. It's usually something bigger. So I was looking for a bigger platform. I've begun to create some stuff, and I'm going to be doing interviews and other things. But for me, it was really putting out a message of healing and how to get people to connect now. The pandemic is one thing. Some parts of the country are opening up. They're doing it in phases. But now there's something that's even deeper that's emerged. And there's a lot of historical baggage to it. And it's ugly. And it needs to be dealt with. It needs to be confronted and faced. And it's something that I've committed to 3 years ago to lead men on in that individual journey of confronting what are our inner demons. And it's what I call the honorable battle, which I picked up from old men's circles. But what it really boils down to is what are the great challenges that we face individually as men? And that is what's going to have us be leaders out there in the world. That's what's going to have us be vehicles for something and to create some kind of change. And one of the videos that I put out is that there's nobody coming to save us, that it's a grassroots thing and that we are going to have to step up. So what kind of men will we need to become? And yes, it is important to have our individual goals. It is important to have our individual outcomes that we want to intend. And then in the face of that, there's purpose. And what does purpose specifically look like for you? And part of the definition of purpose, and I'll get more into this later, because I'm gonna have some content that I'm gonna deliver to you, men, is really looking at how do you serve others? So there's two sides to purpose. There's always the why is something personally important to you? And then there's the side of it of how does it serve other people? That changes the game completely. Because when you start to look for the answers to that question, and the questions that we ask ourselves are really important, it sets you on a different journey. And that's how you get to that place of fulfillment. Because success has to do with achievement, has to do with the achievement of outcomes. But the real victory in life is when you get to that place of fulfillment, and fulfillment has to do with purpose. Fulfillment has to do with, in some way, shape, or form, even if it's in some small way, being of service to others. So for me, doing stuff like this is being of service to others. And what set me on this path, there's been a lot of stuff that I've gone through, but there's one pivotal period of my life that I remember, because, you know, how many of you, and you could just do a show of hands, have had the experience at some point in life where you know what it is to feel completely lost and unguided, and then also feel alone and isolated? Like, show of hands, how many of you just know what that feels like? Yeah, I think every man at some point in his life, particularly in the modern world, has gone through that, because there has been a break in this, this connection to legacy and to mentoring, because we as men, our historic roles are supposed to be man as mentor. And the first mentor that I had in my life was actually a brother who blasted into my life at the age of 16. So I grew up an only child, and I grew up in an abusive household in a rough neighborhood. So I grew up in an environment where, for me, I just feared everyone, and the world looked like a scary, ugly place. And then this man bounces into my life saying he's my brother. I'm like, how the fuck? So he tells me the whole story. He's a lot older than me. So I'm 16, he's 38. My parents were old enough to be my grandparents. I was born an uncle, so I got siblings that are old enough to be my parents. So here's this sibling, he comes into my life, and we connect, we are out there doing stuff together. He's exposing me to things. It turns out that I come from a very large family. I had no idea. My parents effectively took me into isolation in Brooklyn. Most of our family was in Upper Manhattan in the Bronx. And there was a specific reason for that. There was something that my parents did that a lot of family members were, to say they weren't happy with it would be putting it mildly. They got shunned and they got shut out. So my parents then took me, brought me to Brooklyn. And when my brother came to visit, and then he kept visiting every week, he really became like this one ray of light in a world for me that just felt like it was filled with darkness. And we developed this most amazing relationship. So for the first time in my life, I experienced like real brotherhood. Then I also experienced mentoring, like I'm no longer alone. And on top of that, there's guidance. So yeah, I took it really hard when he died all of a sudden. And I didn't know it was coming. So my brother called me from the hospital when he had pneumonia, and I go to visit him. And, you know, it looked like he would recover and he would come out just fine. And he did. And then he had a relapse and he goes back into the hospital. And so we get into this conversation. He calls me from the hospital to go visit him, but he wanted me to bring him a pack of cigarettes. Now, some of you know I worked in health and fitness for 21 years, so I'm naturally a health geek. But even at the age of 17 at this point, I'm 17, he's 39, I said, hell no, I am not taking you a pack of cigarettes when you got a respiratory infection. That would be really irresponsible, man. So this is a year into our relationship, and we got into our first and only fight over a pack of cigarettes. And I said, look, man, let's just squash this. I'll come visit you. I'm going to come see you on Thursday. And you know, that's it. We'll take it from there. So that was the plan. He died the day before. So the guilt that I carried with me. So it thrusted me back into that place of feeling isolated, and I'd lost my mentor and I'd lost my brother. For 9 years, I went through this ongoing like depression ritual. He died September 14th, 1990. He died of AIDS. Now, he didn't tell me he had AIDS. He didn't want me to know. And he didn't want me to know, especially that he was dying. But of course, I carried a hell of a lot of guilt because the last conversation we had was our one and only fight. And then when I planned to see him, he died the day before. For 9 years, as September 14th, and obviously this was in the 90s, so this is before 9/11. As September 14th was approaching every year, it was like this annual thing, like clockwork. I fell into a depression. And then every year, my way of dealing with it was to go to his grave, to his tombstone, and just puke on it. For 9 years, I never replaced the mentoring. I never replaced that experience of brotherhood. I never replaced that deep connection, that guidance, none of it. So I was still that lost 17-year-old well into my 20s, until one day somebody gave me this idea. And it's real interesting because if you find yourself, and I'm sure you can relate, if you find yourself in a situation where you're just in a really fucked up state of mind, you're depressed, you're anxious, you're fearful, whatever it is, some emotional state that doesn't serve you, you're not exactly very solution oriented, are you? You can't think of solutions when you're drowning. And the metaphor that I always use for it is, you know, when your head is underwater and you have that experience of drowning, there's just no possibility. That at the very least, you got to be able to get your head above water and look around to then see land, and then you know the direction in which to swim in. So somebody gave me this idea out of nowhere as I was talking about my brother, and the annual date was approaching, and it's the 9th year now, and I'm in my 9th year of depression. Person tells me, well, you know, it sounds like you just didn't give a dying man his last wish. And I thought, is it really that fucking simple? And the person said, why don't you go to the cemetery this time and bring your brother finally that pack of cigarettes that he wanted? And what was really interesting is that while at first I questioned it, is it really that simple? It then fell on me like a ton of bricks, like, of course it is. And especially for, you know, for us men, most of the time doing something physical is that ritual unloading that we usually need. So while I was going every year just complaining about how bad life was, this time I had an aim. This time there was an offering. This time there was something to do to release all of that guilt that I'd been carrying for years. And so, you know, I got to the cemetery kind of late, so I had to climb over a wall and a gate because it was already closed. And it took me a while to find his grave, and I did. And this time it was radically different. This time when I found his grave, after 9 years, I fell to my knees. Like there was just a real unloading, and I'd realized that this would be the last time, and that this was gonna be the final goodbye. And I pulled out a pack of cigarettes. Now again, I'm a health freak. I smoked half a pack of cigarettes, which I never thought I'd do in my life. And you know something? It felt fucking awesome to just do that with him, because that was the experience and the frame of reference that I had around it. And then I took what was left of the pack, I slipped it behind the tombstone, I put my hand on the tombstone, I gave my final goodbye, and that was it. That was in 1999. I've not felt the need to go back ever since. So I say that to you because my journey has gone through a lot of variations ever since, but that was the first for me, because that was when I'd gone from experiencing being alone, completely unguided, not knowing where to turn, to having this amazing relationship with an actual brother, experiencing brotherhood, mentoring, guidance, and all of that, to then losing it and feeling even worse than before, but and then finding a way around it, finding a solution. And all it is, man, it's just, it was something that one of my mentors, Joseph Campbell, used to say, that all transformation is just a transformation of the eyes. It's just changing how we see a thing. And that's all it really was. So it's what's led me to this journey, and it's why ultimately my life is now created, or rather committed to creating environments where men get to experience that level of brotherhood. Men get to experience other men having their backs, and they get to that point of purpose. Why is a thing personally important to you? And then who else does it serve? Because that is the ultimate maturity of a man, is to get to that point of service to other people. That whatever it is you got to go through, whatever journey you got to go through, like the one that I went through, sometimes your pain becomes your purpose, or your mess becomes your message. Right? And that's one pathway to purpose. That's a very common pathway to purpose. That if you really look in your life, could be something that you're currently dealing with, that you get to the other side, and getting to the other side now qualifies you to bring something to other people that are going through something very similar, or maybe even the same thing. So with that said, what I want to do here is I want to talk about a few things. But one, before I get into the specific content that I want to deliver to you men, I do want to say some honest things about that's, you know, what's out there in the men's world. Because if you've seen Facebook ads, or you've seen just other pathways, you may have come across other men's organizations. And while on the one hand, it really is great that there is this growing men's movement, you know, there's also some pitfalls with the whole thing, because then it becomes a matter of, you need to find a thing that really resonates for you. Okay. And so for that, what I want to do is I'm going to turn back to my slides here. And can you men see my screen? The man mantras equals masculine legacy. Okay, good.
Yeah.
So I'm going to deliver to you men some, what I call them man mantras. And these are just really bulleted statements that I came up with throughout the years. My first exposure to men's circles was in 2007. I learned a lot from that. I learned a lot from other trainings. In the last 3.5 years, I've done a bunch of Tony Robbins stuff. I'm in a year-long mentoring program, like I said now. I've done NLP. I've done all kinds of stuff. And then for me, I'm really into expressing things in as best as possible as a bottom line way. Okay? So what I want to do here is I want to bring up some things that are definitely out there. They're common, they're popular, and, you know, they have their benefits, but then they also have their pitfalls. And so one of them is talking circles. And I've experienced this before. There are some men's groups where they get together and they talk about things. That is not how real lasting change or transformation gets produced, at least not by itself. There has to be either a commitment to a strong action pathway, or there has to be something done that is experiential right then and there in the circle. Now, this requires a lot of the time, some training, some background, some experience, and so on. I put out a video about this with regard to the George Floyd outcry, because people don't need more explanation these days. They need more experience. And one thing that I did on a previous MCH call a couple of weeks ago, I got this idea from a client of mine. I decided to lead an exercise that was 8 minutes and 45 seconds long, because that is the approximate amount of time that that officer had his knee on George Floyd's neck. And the purpose of the exercise, and I am very into pushing people into uncomfortable places. And the reason being is because we're grown-ass men on this call. Even if you're dealing with women, we're adults, and we need to learn to deal with uncomfortable things. And an experience of something uncomfortable is often what changes hearts and minds. It is not more explanation. Oftentimes, it's not just more words, unless those words are spoken in a certain way to lead a person to an exercise, right? Or through some experience. But again, it really becomes a matter of explaining versus experiencing. So when it comes to just talking, unless it is within the context of an exercise that is really meant to push a person somewhere, you gotta be willing to go to uncomfortable places. But that is where the gold is found. So if it is just a sitting down talking thing, it's never going to be enough. And sometimes it becomes a kind of pseudo psychotherapeutic thing, right? So that's one challenge that I see out there, a pitfall. Brotherhood. You've heard me mention this. This is a great quote from Sebastian Junger. There's a great TED talk that he gave titled, "Why Veterans Miss War." Highly recommend checking it out. And this is a great quote from him, man. Brotherhood, it's a mutual agreement in a group that you will put the welfare of the group, the safety of everyone in the group above your own. That you have that kind of deep relationship, those kinds of bonds with people, that you care that much. And that gets formed in a specific way. So here's the first man mantra. You cannot form brotherhood with a man who will not fight the honorable battle. I'll get more into that later, which is that shared experience of the struggle of our depth of humanity that binds us together. Again, it's an experience. It is not just more explaining. It's a place to go to, because in the end, we all have pretty much the same subset of emotional experience, right? Like the same emotional spectrum. And men bond when they go through something together, or when they know that somebody else has gone through something similar. You experience that bond, okay? Yeah, so one of the things that I've noticed that I've seen that's very common out there is men's trainings rehashing a lot of the same old content. And there's 4 off the top of my mind. I won't mention what they are, but in the end, what's very common out there, and what you'll see is the 4 male archetypes. And it's a good system. Back in 2008 and 2010, I co-led a men's weekend. It was called the Legacy Discovery, and it was rooted in that body of work, the 4 male archetypes: king, lover, warrior, magician. It's based on a book from about 30 years ago. But there's something that I've been noticing is that even newer men's organizations and newer men's trainings, they're doing the same old thing. They may have their own spin on it, but it is the same old thing, which means that if you went to one men's training from one organization, then you went to another and another, and they're just bringing the same old body of work, you're effectively going to experience the same thing. So there is a lack of depth and creativity, and I'm going to give you men some stuff later that has come out of a lot of R&D that I've done, and a lot of application from leading some men's trainings for the last couple of years. And yeah, just hang tight for that, because it is definitely going to be very different than this. Typical one-on-one therapy. If you recall what I mentioned earlier regarding purpose, and again, there are benefits and there are limitations to each of these things. Limitation is obviously going to be that if you're doing a one-on-one thing, and look, I'm a coach, right? And I have a coaching practice. I work with people one-on-one, but I am always pushing them and encouraging them toward relationships and environments. And you're going to hear me talk about environments in a bit. The bonds that are formed that really make a difference are formed in certain environments where standards are being held. And really what it boils down to, I can't recall who first said this, but you want to surround yourself with people that are going to hold you to a higher standard than you would otherwise hold yourself. So a one-on-one environment by itself is never going to be enough. You need to find something that is encouraging, something that holds standards, something that is not going to sell you out. We do live in a time that has become increasingly over-pathologized. And the result of that is that a lot of people are being coddled instead of challenged. A lot of people are being medicated instead of empowered. You want to serve people, not soothe people. So again, and this when it comes to something like this, it also boils down to who's the individual therapist or coach or counselor, right? It always is going to come down to ability and skill level, and that's just one of those things there. Purpose gets created with other people. This is a great definition of purpose from Angela Duckworth. Highly recommend her book. It's called Grit, The Power of Passion and Persuasion. And by the way, with all this stuff that I got on here, feel free to take screenshots or pictures of your screen if it's helpful. I'm going to be presenting a lot. All right. So yeah, feel free to, I want you to like walk out of here with usable stuff. Okay. With things that you can take with you. And this is being recorded, and I'll send you a link to the recording. I'll put it up on YouTube and stuff. So again, purpose is serving others. Now, granted, you may need to go through your own journey first. In fact, that usually makes purpose so much more, stick out. You'll know your purpose oftentimes when you go through the right journey, when you are pushed and compelled and challenged properly to really confront whatever that is. Great words from Joseph Campbell. He's one of my personal heroes. You're going to see me mention more of them later. But yeah, a hero is someone who has given his life to something bigger than oneself. And when we quit thinking primarily about ourselves and our own self-preservation, we undergo a truly heroic transformation of consciousness. If you don't know who Joseph Campbell is, you can look him up. He's the one that really mapped out the famous hero journey in the 20th century. So yeah, and you've heard me mention this already. Meds. Now, there's a pill for that is the title of an article that was written some years ago. I had a client who I worked with for some years, and he was an interesting individual. His name was Robert Rosenberg, and he had a PhD and MD. He ran a biology lab at MIT and a medical lab at fucking Harvard. If you can believe it, he had chairs at both universities, meaning, he was real smart. So he turns me on to this article, and I can't remember where it was written, either the New York Times or the New Yorker. It was something New York. And yeah, it's the pharmaceutical industry is scrambling to always come up with a pill for whatever issue we face. But then that's the problem. If you are resorting to the pills, then it is going to limit your ability to face the challenge honestly with all of the hardships of it. And it's incredibly important that we build ourselves up to be able to be the kind of men that can face challenges. And look at what's happening in the world today, what's been happening for months. We all got put through a collective challenge. So, and I anticipated that anxiety, depression, and suicides were going to go up during the pandemic, and sure enough, they did. Because if people do not know, if they're not accessing the internal resources to face these challenges, when a big collective challenge like this hits, it's going to be even harder. They weren't prepared, and I mean emotionally prepared. And we all have the resources within us. It's just a matter of tapping into them, seeking out the right training, development, guidance, mentoring, and so on. That's going to set you on the path of that level of discovery. Another man mantra here. Again, feel free to take a screenshot, or I'm putting these out as a series of memes, by the way. And I just had somebody create some templates. So the more difficult the pill is to swallow, the better the medicine it contains. It's the same as the harder the battle, the sweeter the victory. Those challenges of life, those internal, external challenges, whatever they are, I heard Tony Robbins earlier talking about this, they will make or break us. They can refine you or define you. And that really all comes down to, just frame of reference, how you see the situation, how you listen to it, how you experience it overall, right? And then next, the most honorable battle for a man to face is to face his own demons, own an ugly truth, feel everything he is supposed to feel, and employ solutions to be victorious.
Oh.
That's what it boils down to, man. Okay, so it's really important to take a look at, and this in and of itself may be challenging, what you have believed up to this point. And Tony Robbins has these great words that belief is a poor substitute for experience. What have you believed up to this point? What are the effects of those beliefs? Beliefs about yourself, that's personal identity. Beliefs about the world. Beliefs about the current situation that we're all faced with. Do you see yourself as dealing with it very individually? Do you see it more from a community context? What are those beliefs really? I'll get more into that. So I told you about content that I developed. So this is something that I came up with, and I just call it the 8 steps. This is part of a larger framework, which I'm about to show you. But what it really boils down to is that this is a pathway that I've mapped out. And it begins with, shouldn't surprise you given the story that I shared with you earlier, mentor. Then it goes into standards. Great words that I've heard is the secret to life is to raise your standards. What do you tolerate? What do you put up with? That's going to determine a lot. So you got mentor, standards, journey. Say a bit more about that. Awaken, courage, fight, truth, and purpose. Now let me plug this into the bigger framework here. So this is a model that I call a man's path. And it's 8 steps and 4 stages. I just went through the 8 steps, and you can see the 4 stages represented in the borders out there. Environment, send-off, honorable battle, and self-discovery. So every 2 steps is within a stage, all right? And I've got this on social media posted as well. I got a full color version of it that looks pretty cool because it looks like 4 tribal sticks tied together representing this whole thing, right? Now, what I'm going to do is, because obviously there's no way time is going to allow for me to go through this whole thing. Just to unpack it might take like a couple of hours. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through 3 steps. All right? That's what I'm going to give you. And we're going to start with the end, purpose. You've already heard me beginning to talk about this, okay? This is something that I've modeled on a number of other models, number of other places that I've gotten, but this is my own variation. And I call it the purpose ladder. And there's a tipping point there in the middle. You've heard me mention how incredibly important it is to not only get mentoring, but for you yourself to grow and qualify into that man, to claim that role of man as mentor, because it is a historic role. Now, at these different levels, down there at the level of self, I have it colored in red for a reason, because it's a danger zone. You don't want to stay down there too long. When you're down at the level of self, the best thing that you got is self-help, which is fine, right? You take on that exercise program. You take on that new diet program. I heard a couple of you mention that as victories for the past week. You're reading books, personal development, professional development. You could be seeking out professional training. Whatever it is, it can serve you. And that's good. But a lot of the times, even particularly when we're going to exercise and diet and stuff, you often need the accountability of that next level, which is environment. Now, I have it colored green intentionally because it's green for go. That at the very least, man, you gotta have some kind of environment that serves you, some kind of environment that pushes you forward, a high standards environment. And so it's always important to look at where are you here? And as you're elevating your level of purpose, you are in a better position to then contribute to others. That's what it looks like. Now, this is the full model. I'm not going to have time here to really unpack this either. I have it on social media as well, or you can take a picture or a snapshot or whatever, but it describes, you know, each level in some detail on either side. Okay, you got the what and why scope, and then the who and how many. But the important thing is I want you to really look at that tipping point. And the reason being is the tipping point is there because historically we've always lived in communities. And for us to really qualify as mentors, we are giving to some community. That's what it boils down to. That is the historic role of man as mentor. You gotta cross that tipping point. The nuclear family focus is something that I think really began in the 1950s, and the divorce rate has just been climbing ever since. There's always been a community of some sort in forming families, and then from there you could create environments in different places. You can see all the examples there. But the important thing is you don't want to stay down at that level of self, not for too long. You need that accountability. You need those standards. You need something pulling you forward. Great words from Bruce Lee. The consciousness of self is the greatest hindrance to the proper execution of the mind and the will. This is what I mean by you don't want to stay down there at that level of self for too long. all right? Self-consciousness is basically what it's boiled down to, will definitely shoot you in the foot. Man mantra here, you cannot be solution-oriented until you know what the real problem is. And again, you may have to go on that journey to discover what that is, because it may not be what you think it is. Now, assessment time. I'm big on assessments because if you're not assessing, you're guessing. Going to invite you, men, to really have a look at this, right? And this is actual versus aspirational, because you want to be careful to, you know, honestly, not buy your own bullshit here and believe that your aspirations are where you're really at. Having aspirations, having goals, that's incredibly important, yes. But you got to get real with yourself around where are you actually. So you got two questions there. And I want you to answer those questions for yourself, right? Like, this is not just a lecture here. I want you to get real with yourself. What level are you at really with regard to purpose? And then what level do you want to be at? What do you envision for yourself? Because that's important. A man's got to have a vision. And if you don't have a vision or you're struggling to find one, let me just caution you, don't beat yourself up. Also, don't beat yourself up if you know full well that the truth is that you are down at the level of self. You're human. Hell, we're still technically, I think, in a pandemic. We had to isolate and quarantine. So, yeah, I could expect many people were falling down to that level of self, even if they didn't want to. Don't beat yourself up around it. Something else I always warn is don't beat yourself up if you catch yourself beating yourself up. Because that's another pitfall. All right? You just want to be real with yourself, man. Just treat it as like a functional assessment, right? That if you get real with where you are right now versus where you want to be, and then at least you know what the gap is. Okay? And it's real important, by the way, that you climb up properly, because you cannot jump up multiple levels. That is not sustainable. In other words, if you know full well you're currently down at the level of self, you're not going to just jump up to the level of community like that. Doesn't work like that. You need to have infrastructure, some foundation at the levels below it in order to have sustainable participation at a higher level that's a few levels up. Okay? So, because I see this so much, people come out of these transformational trainings and weekend stuff or what have you, seminars, and they're like, you know, they want to take on the world and they're loaded with a lot of possibility and so on. And you speak to them months later and they're right back down at the level of self. And the reason being is that they didn't climb up properly. You got work to do. You have to climb up. You can't just jump up multiple levels. You got to have the experience, the foundation, the infrastructure, whatever it takes at the level just below to maintain sustainable participation at the level that you want to be at. And this is part of the journey. It's just mapped out right there in front of you. Now, it's going to look different for each man, right? But this is ultimately what it looks like. Now, yeah, man, the pain is in the purpose gap a lot of the times. That you know where you want to be, but you're not there yet, and you're multiple levels below it. Again, don't beat yourself up around that. It's, you know, you just have work to do. View it functionally. Just see it as, here's the path. This is what I got to do. Yeah, so there's something I call the purpose tank. If you recall when I mentioned earlier about purpose is the individual reasons why something is important to you personally. And then it's also how you serve others, right? So the more reasons that you have for a thing, whatever your goal is, whatever your intended outcome is, the more reasons that you can stockpile for it, the more you will fill that purpose tank. Because by now, given that we're all adult men here, everyone would have at least the experience level that you know full well that whatever your goal is, that by now, you know it's not a straight path. I love Mike Tyson's words where he says, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. So whatever your plan is, you got to be adaptable. And so you know it's never a straight line path. It's always some curvy thing. There are roadblocks there. There's going to be obstacles in your path. You're going to have to skate around. You're going to have to go over, under, whatever it's going to take. But the more reasons that you have for why a thing is personally important and how it serves other people, that is how you fill your purpose tank. And if you got a full purpose tank, you will have sufficient fuel to keep going around all the obstacles to ultimately get to your intended outcome, whatever it is. But that purpose fulfillment, man, that's what's going to keep you going. That's what's going to be the drive. All right? Man mantra. This is one of my favorites. The 3 Ps. Purpose provides perspective. Living purposefully has you become bigger so your problems become small, or some cases they'll completely disappear. It really just depends on the size of the problem. And I hope that you're getting by now that, you know, this whole thing is really just like perspective. That's all it really is. It is just perspective. Here's another one. Lose your why and you will lose your way. If you have no why, then you have no way. All right. So it's the first time I'm going to do this, but I'm going to play with the poll feature on over here on Zoom. Let me see this thing. Where's the poll? Where's the poll? Polling. All right, good. All right, great. So do you men see this on your screen?
Yes, sir.
Great. Answer that question. Testing your knowledge here, making sure that you're paying attention. Okay, I'm going to give it another 15 seconds.
I wonder if bosses do that during meetings.
What was that?
Well, no, I wonder if bosses do that during meetings. They're like, looks like someone wasn't paying attention. You're done!
That was definitely a cool little tidbit you added on there, Reyes.
Good, I'm glad. All right, so let's share the results here. Okay. All right, so you men did pretty good with that one. All right, good. Now, let's see, how do I get to my next poll? Ah, here we go. Okay, good. Do you men? All right, here we go. Here's the next one. Giving you 20 seconds to answer that. Few more seconds left. Okay, good. Let's have a look. We're going to share the results here. Power. Yes, it can add power after you get the right perspective, though. So first, it's got to be that. All right. And then last one. We're going to go to the third and final one. Boom. There you go. Got another 20 seconds.
Yeah, this is funny.
Really hilarious options there.
Okay, good. Let's end the poll, share the results. Way to Wakanda. Yep, I could see that. All right, men. We're going to continue on now. Just a couple of more things here. Going to bring it back to to screen share. Okay, good. All right, so we went through the 3 polls. All right, so here's the next thing. So we got 2 more left. These are a little shorter. You heard me mention before about mentor. Step 1. If you at least get yourself a solid mentoring or you're in a mentoring environment, you now automatically get yourself up to the level of environment. That's incredibly important, as I've mentioned, right? And you need to have people that you can really model and emulate. And I love these words from John Leguizamo. If we don't see ourselves outside of ourselves, we're fucking invisible. And that is so incredibly important, man. You need to have those masculine models and mentors, right? It doesn't mean that it's people, and I draw a distinction between models and mentors because you can have a lot of models and, you know, you read their books, you follow them. They might be famous people. They could be alive or dead. You'll see from my examples. They may not be specific mentors. Mentoring is a tighter relationship. You actually know the person. They can really guide you through something. But having models is still incredibly important. This is my personal list of models. And I've broken it up into 2 categories. My legacy models, those are the men who have come and gone. And then the living models, self-explanatory, the men that are still alive. Now, each of these men, they represent a different aspect of my character, of my personality, of my goals, my intentions, my level of purpose, and so on. And some of them are radically different from each other. But the important thing is that they're models for me. They're guides for me. And one of the things that I tell men a lot, because social media can become such an easy addiction, if you have a clear list of models, of people that you admire, that you want to follow more of, great. Discipline your social media as best as you can to follow them. Right, so it gives you a pathway, and feel free to borrow from mine. Obviously, you know, check any of these men out. Again, screenshot or take a picture or whatever, and look them up and see if there's anything there for you within my models. All right, but it's important to have that because it helps to discipline your social media engagement, any media engagement for that matter. All right, the books that you read, and so on and so forth. All right, so at least you got some models, even if you don't have direct mentors right now. So here's the question, man. Who are your models and mentors, and why? What is it about those men? What are the specific traits about them that really speak to you? And I want you to really answer this for yourself. Like, this is incredibly important. Who are those people? Take this with you, because I don't expect you to create an exhaustive list right now, you know, all of a sudden, but definitely take this with you. You need to answer that. Okay? Now, moving on. You've heard me mention standards. The secret to life is to raise your standards. Tony Robbins, those are his words. I've mentioned them already earlier. Standards really guide. It becomes a personal thing. Now, if you're at the level of environment, then it's a collective thing, right? But it's important for each man to have his own standards. And then when you join an environment, you want to join an environment that, again, you know, you surround yourself with people that are going to hold you to a higher standard than you would otherwise hold yourself. Because it's important to hold ourselves, you know, to higher standards, but it's also really difficult a lot of the times for us to hold ourselves accountable. And that's another value added from environments. You have the accountability there. Okay. So high standards versus high maintenance. You want to hold high standards for yourself so that you don't become high maintenance for others. That is really important. I don't know if I have, I'll say it anyway, but standards-based relationships over nepotism. A few of you know that I had an experience with another brother beginning Thanksgiving. My mother died in December, and we had a serious meltdown around her wishes and how she wanted to be dealt with end of life because she was in a vegetative state. It got really, really fucking ugly. And I bottom lined it that for me, the most important thing, because I was very fortunate to have men to be able to serve me during that incredibly difficult time, standards-based relationships over nepotism. Sometimes the best relationships that you find may not be immediately in your family, and so be it. Matter of fact, that's probably more the exception than the rule. A lot of the times you find the highest standard relationships outside of family, and it might be outside of your current friends, right? So really, in guiding you through this, what is your journey? What's that next step really look like, right? And that's where it gets interesting. Like for me, when I'm always looking at the next step, I came to a conclusion last year because I did a lot of programs in the past 3.5 years. I think I mentioned to you, man, I was doing Tony Robbins stuff. I'm in a program now, a year-long mentoring program. And one of the things that I really came to is I take on programs that are somehow going to serve my purpose. And I'm very clear on what that purpose is. And my higher purpose, some men will know, is to make a massive difference in the health and personal growth of as many people as I can affect while enjoying the journey, so that I leave behind a living legacy through a body of work that continues to contribute long after I'm gone. So as I'm showing you these models, I put a lot of time, energy, and resources into it because it is my journey, because I feel alive when I'm doing this stuff. And then when I get to share it with people and I directly train and mentor men in it, that's an expression of my personal purpose. That's what it looks like for me. So in looking, for yourself, what is your journey? I lay out this 3-step mantra, as I call it, or a motto: fire, freedom, fulfillment. And to express it fully, it's the fire of courage, the freedom of expression, and the fulfillment of purpose. Like that's the pathway that I lay out. Okay. So what I do is, this is where I'm going to share with you, men, the Awaken the Dragon. I started this as a 2-day training, partly as an experiment back in October 2018. I had like 12 men in the room, and it was in New York, and it was fucking awesome. It was incredible, and I just brought whatever the hell I had at the time into it and made it into a transformational journey for those men. Since then, it's evolved. I've taken it to Toronto, still doing it in New York, and I evolved it into a 3-day journey, right? Obviously, with the pandemic, like I mentioned, we canceled the entire spring season. So, but I had it in mind beginning in November anyway to launch a 10-week version. And so, that was what I'm really focused on these days. The purpose remains the same. The purpose of the Awaken the Dragon training is to embolden you to soar beyond the limits that have prevented you from becoming the man you are destined to be, so that you advance in your pursuit of greatness with the renewed fire of a dragon and the strength of a brotherhood seeing you through. That ought to sum up everything that I have spoken about so far. That's ultimately what it's about. So my purpose is I guide men on this journey, okay? And what we're doing is we're launching the 10-week online version, September 2020. Now, we still have plans, of course, for bringing back the 3-day version in person in New York and in Toronto. But, obviously, one thing that we've taken into consideration is that there could be a second wave in this pandemic in the fall. We'll see. The important thing, and I even put out a video about this a couple of weeks ago, is you want to unstuck yourself from the how, right? It's like when Mike Tyson says, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. Okay, we got a plan. Fine. In the end, the important thing is that we're driven by purpose. And so the how is adaptable. That's where we get to be creative. That's where we get to be, bring the solutions and do whatever we can to still serve a purpose. So it started as a 3-day journey. It will definitely come back as a 3-day journey, but it has been part of the plan since late 2019 to launch this thing as a 10-week online journey anyway. That the purpose is going to be served no matter what, pandemic or no pandemic. And in fact, I find it even more important now, especially in light of everything that we've been experiencing with all of the public outcry that started with George Floyd's slow, torturous murder on a street in broad daylight in Minneapolis. Where do we go from here? Because if we're going to live together, we need leaders. We need men with some fire in their belly, yes, but with some heart and some compassion as well as some soul. Because we got too many people out there that are just making other people wrong. And it doesn't work. It doesn't serve. So I always point men toward the honorable battle is always an inward thing. There are external battles that we are all going to fight. There's no doubt about that. But make sure that when you look in the mirror, you have given your absolute best to you. And that you have fought whatever battles with your inner demons that you have had to see you through. So that you show up out there in the world to the external battles your absolute best. So that's ultimately what this is about, and that's what I'm here to do, is to train men to be able to accomplish that. So yeah, man. The registration site is at manpath.net. I'm going to open this up for some Q&A. I want to give you men some details around it. It begins September 20th, 2020, excuse me, not September 20th. September 2020, in the second week of September, we will flesh out a date, a specific date right now. It's looking like Tuesdays, but to see what will best work for the greatest number of participants, of registrants, okay? This is the pricing plan. I wanted to make this workable so that money never becomes a barrier. So the total price is $597, but we already have it set up on the website, the payment plan breakdown. It is 10 weeks. There's going to be 2 weeks in which, 2 separate weeks, in which you're going to have a week off to practice and do the work, then come back, and then we're going to have another week off later in the program. So the week is really extended out to 12 weeks. It's probably going to be a bonus week anyway, right? So expect it to go out to 12 weeks. That's 3 months. And from here to there, you know, there's plenty of time to pay it off. So I've gotten really big on payment plans so that, you know, money is not a barrier for men. And I do understand the situation with people still coming out of this pandemic. A lot of people were financially affected. Whatever it takes to make this work, I strongly encourage you. Join us on this journey. I'd love to fucking have you there. Okay? So, yeah, the journey before the journey, my final words on this is to register is one thing, to be a participant is another. When you register, you become a registrant, right? And it's what I call the journey before the journey. There's a questionnaire to fill out, and it's important to take your time in filling it out because that is your stake in the ground. That really fleshes out your personal journey. And I will have you revisit it throughout the program. Okay, so until we actually start in September, I treat it as the journey before the journey because stuff may come up for you. And it's fine. Whatever the hell comes up, bring it into that training environment. And it will be on Zoom, just like this, except that the environment will be confidential. That means that whatever you reveal there, whatever we do there, remains confidential and it does not go anywhere. So it's not a public presentation like this thing is. There are exercises, sometimes some very deep, intense, emotional exercises. I'm gonna have you do some work, right? And there'll be some personal coaching time. So it will be kept confidential. So those are all the details. I'm gonna leave this slide up. And again, that's the website, manpath.net. I wanna open this up for Q&A. Any questions that you may have, just take yourself off mute and we'll get it going.
Reyes.
Yo.
Bertrand here, Pop. So I just had a question about the purpose ladder. How do we get to that tipping point? Can you speak to that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very individualized, but then generally what it boils down to is you got to first enter an environment. That's probably the easiest step. Here's where it's the hardest, and that's the level of family, because there's really two sides to it. It really is a matter of where you're at currently. If you're a married father, clearly you've built a nuclear family, right? Even if you're not a married father, you're a dad, or even if you're just married, you're in a nuclear family situation. Okay. You'll have to look at your challenges there. But no matter what, I have each and every man really dig into his past, because the interesting thing about family, when it comes to all those levels of the purpose ladder, that is the level that is the most dramatic. It's the level that's usually the most challenging, the most tumultuous, because a lot of the times there's something in our past that is still running the show. And while it's easy to say the past does not equal the future, we know that in theory, right? But then the question becomes, all right, I know that I got some past that's still running the show. And here's a factoid for you. 55% of our beliefs get set in place, usually by the age of 5. The latest 5 to 7, but usually by the age of 5. And then the remaining 45% are often built on the foundation of the first 55% that you established somewhere between the age of 5 and 7. So that says a lot. And there are certain beliefs that, you know, back then, if your parents told you, you know, don't talk to strangers, that's a safety thing to keep you safe and secure, right? So you don't get abducted or what have you. But as an adult, that really doesn't work. And if there's any part of that that's still running the show, don't talk to strangers, as an adult, that is seriously going to limit you. So you take a deep dive and you start taking a look at in that area of family, because that's just under the tipping point. But it is the hardest the hardest level to overcome, because that is right there. When you look at your the inner demons you got to do battle with, a lot of them were set up in your past. Probably all of them. So you got to really take a good hard look at that. So family is the most challenging, and it is right there under that tipping point. But again, if your pain becomes your purpose and your mess becomes your message, and you really truly overcome that level of family, man, the world just opens up to you. And something else that I want to say about the purpose ladder, that's that I put it on every man to cross the tipping point. I put it on every man that you must get to that level of community, right? Because historically, we always lived in community. If you have a bigger vision at the organizational level, it could be national, international, or at the level of the world, global, great. I do not expect that every single human being is going to be at that level. That is very individually determined. You have to look at your own path and see if that's what's true for you. But what I do put on every man is that, yes, we are all supposed to be at the level of community. And I also understand that we live in a world, it's particularly in North America, and especially in the United States, where community is just not really valued as much. And we have suffered greatly as a result. Community is still vitally important. It's like, just because we don't value certain things does not mean that they're not deeply hardwired within us as values, as necessities. So it was a good question. It's obviously very detailed and determined by a person's individual journey. But the thing to always look out for, man, is that level of family. And people, when they're in therapy for years, a lot of shit just comes up around that level. Does that answer your question? Any follow-up or anything?
No, we're good. Thank you.
Yep, for sure, man. Any other questions?
Could you say the fire, freedom, fulfillment?
Mm-hmm.
I like that. Could you expand on that?
Yeah, it's a 3-step process. It's like, if fire is the fire of courage, that it's going to take some courage to undergo a difficult journey, whether you know what's on the other side of it or not. It takes some courage. And a lot of the times even when we think we know, we wound up, somebody pointed this out on the last MCH last week about, you know, getting what he didn't know he needed, right, from those weekly calls. And so there's always that. You may think you're after something, and you might genuinely be after that, even at the end of the journey, but then you realize there's some other stuff that's important also. So it takes some courage, because you got to embrace the uncertainty of it. And great words that I've heard on this is the quality of your life is determined by the amount of uncertainty that you can comfortably handle. And so it takes courage. And it takes some fire for that, right? And I use the symbolism of the dragon for that reason, partly, right? The fire of courage. Then it comes down to the freedom of expression. And for us men in particular, we often have a greater challenge speaking about things. This is why when you heard me talk early on about the talking circles and the limitation of it, the reason it's limiting is because we men often need something more physical and experiential, and testosterone just demands that. Women a lot of the times get greater value in talking circles than men do, right? Men have to physically engage with something and do something to really have that same experience. And so there's a level of expression there and a rawness and sometimes a primal nature that when we got to unload, it ain't just fucking talking. And so creating an environment where that freedom of expression, that a man can just freely express whatever's there for him, knowing that there's not going to be any judgment of anything that he has done, of anything that he's revealing. And that just really takes something more for men than it would for women. But we got to have that freedom of expression. And if a man can be able to do that in a confidential environment, he often develops that capacity to then be able to do it more publicly as well, if his path is to become a more public leader. I will always have men look for that these days because I think that the world is in dire need of leadership, man, more so than ever before, just given everything that we're collectively dealing with. And then the fulfillment, that just goes back to purpose. You know, when it becomes clear what your why is, when it becomes clear why something is important to you personally and how you are now going to be a vehicle for serving others, that experience of fulfillment is just incredible. I think Martin Luther King has some great words around that your highest, and I'm going to wind up, chopping it, but paraphrasing here, that your highest goal in life is something around seeking out how can you serve others. That should be your highest goal in life. And Joseph Campbell even says that, the most important thing is to be fulfilled. You got this one life to live. Even if you believe in reincarnation, you're not likely to remember it anyway. So you need to treat it like this is what you got. This is your life. This is your one shot. Go for the fulfillment, because fulfillment is an experience. Purpose is like a kind of more of like an abstraction, even if you're very clear on it. When you are living your purpose, you have the experience of fulfillment and all of the associated emotions that come with it. So that's why I make it that pathway of fire, freedom, fulfillment. The order is very intentional.
Got it.
Yeah. So thank you for that. It's a good question.
Yeah.
A great question. Great answer too. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So you talk about, and it's great that you mentioned, the other talking circles, and I like how you call it talking circles, because, it does, from my experience, occur like it's a men's club, but, not very much gets created or, not much purpose gets created for that matter. What would you say would be the distinction between, say, what you're creating here with this organization versus, without naming names, what we're mostly familiar here inside of this group?
The intentionality and the design of the experience. When I design a training, I make it a finely tuned experience. And I pull out exercises from like all of my training in NLP and just everything that I've done throughout the years and being in men's circles for years, and put it together in such a way where, like, the model that you see behind me, the Man's Path model in poster form, I put everything up on the walls and I keep it up for all 3 days. And then I make, in the 10-week program, make regular reference to it so that men are black and white clear on where they are in the journey and they can map it out for themselves. And then I bring in like very experiential exercises because, like I said early on, the experience is what makes the difference, man, more so than just explaining. So I give them an experience of something. Then afterward, they can journal and share and reveal or whatever. what that experience really brought up for them. But yeah, man, the big difference is the experience, finely tuned, designed in such a way to produce a certain set of outcomes versus sitting around or standing around and talking, right? Where at the best you'll get just explanations and stuff like that. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's another good question. Any other questions? Okay.
Think you're getting any money from being with us tonight or what you did with the MCH? Why do you do that? Why
What
do
was
you
that?
do this? Why do you do this?
I know what it is to be alone. I know what it is to be lost. And it sucks. It really sucks. I know what it is even to have some cool relationships, but not a real environment of trusted masculine bonds. And that's okay. Doesn't suck. It's just okay. That all of the benefit and the results that I've produced and gotten, even, you know, because I fly to different parts of the country into Canada to do different trainings. You know, I even did a Wim Hof training last year. I will fucking just like go to wherever and spend whatever money that I can fucking spend to be trained up. I'm very big on training and development. So I'm here to just pay it forward. That's it, to just pay that gift forward. Because sometimes I could look at a man and I can tell what's missing. Sometimes I could see in him what he's not seeing in himself right now. And I will not stop until I know that I can serve him. So for me, it's, yeah, easy to say that it's an expression of my purpose, but to know where my purpose comes from is, you know, my personal experience of being down in the dumps, of feeling like a complete failure, feeling alone, feeling completely unguided, to then feeling okay, having some cool relationships, to then feeling like I'm in a fucking environment here that is very much about holding standards, and I know I'm not doing this alone, whatever the hell it is that I'm doing. They're here for me, I'm here for them. And I've had it happen where even up to 2 weeks ago, like particularly after George Floyd's death, I was heavy-hearted for a while. It was very heavy. And I have a weekly Friday call with my enrollment team. And for 2 weeks, like up to that point, I'd always brought a lot. In those 2 weeks, I needed them to bring to me. I needed to be held up. Because as a man, I'm human and I can go through my shit and I've got all my training and my techniques to keep me going as best as possible. But man, there are those times in which I just need other men. Like when my mom had a heart attack, and men on this call know it, I set up a series of Zoom calls with men that I trust, because I was in the thick of it. And I felt completely betrayed by my own blood. And that was really hard to deal with. So it's just gotten to a point for me that it doesn't fucking matter for me what a man is going through. I'm gonna fucking dominate the problem, and I'm gonna have him dominate the problem to find a solution and come out on the other end. And I'm not gonna stop until that happens. And to see me in action in rooms is to see me doing interventions. And I don't fucking stop.
Thank you.
So that's why I do it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Any other questions?
This is Michas again. Is this an opportunity where my men can register if he wanted to?
Yeah, man. Just right on the site. It's already set up, manpath.net.
Okay.
You know, if you want to scroll through a bit, you can, but if not, you can just go right up at the top, click register, and it'll take you right over to the registration page. And it's going to have the questionnaire on there to lay that stake in the ground.
Kiha, you still on?
I don't see him on, no.
Okay,
Yeah, communicate with him offline.
absolutely.
hmm So yeah, if you men have any questions, even specifically about the program, by all means, anything at all, feel free.
Yes. Hey, this is Murray.
Yep.
So, what if a man wants to register, but he won't be able to do it tonight? Is there any particular things that he needs to do?
No, I mean, if you can't do it tonight, that's fine. If there's a particular challenge, you can be in touch with me personally around it. But yeah, I mean, you know, we've got from here to September. The payment plan shrinks obviously as there's less time. So, you know, I allow a man to pay for it during the program, which runs out 3 months. That's why I'm able to offer 4 months. But yeah, if you can't do it tonight, that's fine. If there's any specific challenge, be in touch with me. But whatever it takes.
Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you. Any other questions? This video will be made available, by the way, like I mentioned before, just to remind you. We'll email it to you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, Irving, were you?
This isn't really a question, more of a statement. Thank you for putting this up and designating your time, donating your time to help, you know, this group of men out. So I really appreciate it. I know you're doing, you know, it takes a lot of time and everything. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
Irving? I don't think he caught that. It's cool.
Any other questions? Okay,
Morgan, you look like you're waiting to be asked a question. You look so focused.
Who?
You.
Oh man, I'm present.
Oh.
All right, man, it is 9:36. So I want to thank you for your time. One of my mentors, his name is Paul Theroux. He used to lead seminars years ago. He said one of the most generous things that you can give a person is your listening. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. If I may be of service in any way, by all means, reach out. And yeah, man, would love to see you in the program in September. I'll be doing another one of these next month. I will let you know when. And yeah, man, thanks again, man.
Yeah.
Reyes.
Thanks for your time.
Please don't end the Zoom yet, because I just want to connect with a few men. You know, change contacts. You know what I mean? Maybe 2 minutes.
I have to, simply because I'm recording, and so it wouldn't be confidential for you. Do you see what I'm saying?
All right, cool.
Yeah. So
you can always stop recording. Right?
All right, man. Thanks so much. Have a good night. Take care.
Good night.